So welcome. My name is Louise Caron. I am the Executive Director here at the Center for Art Law. Thank you for joining us in this digital space, and welcome to today's Art Law Lunch Talk about the legal issues surrounding digital art collections, from museum acquisition to archiving and copyright law. Many thanks to our speakers, Katharina Garbers-von Boehm, as well as Sylvain Levy, whom Irina Tarsis, the center's founder, and today's moderator will introduce in more detail shortly. All of our speakers are joining us from Europe, and thank you to our interns, Marie Kessel, Gabrielle Discafani, and Laura Kaiser, who helped in putting this program and the course materials together. So if this is the first time you're attending a Center for Art Law event, let me give you a snapshot of this wonderful organization. We are a Brooklyn-based research and education nonprofit dedicated to offering resources and programming for the advancement of a vibrant arts and law community worldwide. Through our website, our newsletter, and events, we disseminate information and we keep our audience updated on art law related news, programs, cases, publications, and so much more. And now fully online, as you can expect it, the center facilitates conversations by hosting and participating in programs such as today. We have a great internship program, and this does not even begin to explain everything that we do. So we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter, to receive updates and invitations, and to visit our website at itsartlaw.org. You may also want to consider becoming a member, and if you can, make a donation to support our efforts in making art law accessible. We have two upcoming programs next week, one on public art and the other one about multidisciplinary artists and what legal business advice they should be focusing on as they build their practice. And so before we begin, a few of the usual housekeeping items. This program is currently recording for archival purposes, so feel free to turn off your camera, and everybody will be muted except for the panelists for the duration of the program. If you have any questions for the panelists, please ask them using the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring it and sending links to relevant articles and cases throughout the discussion, and will happily help with any tech issues or practical questions. Finally, a link to the handouts with bios and reading materials was sent to you earlier today. I will also put it in the chat shortly. They will be emailed to you after the program, along with a brief survey and the slides. I think that's about it for now. So without further ado, let me introduce Irina Tarsis, the founder and managing director of the Center for Art Law, who will present the speakers and get the conversation started.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much for the fantastic work that you and the Spring team have been doing. The amount of wonderful publications is really hard to enumerate, but thank you so very much. Can you share the capacity to advance with me? And I will take over this for the introduction portion. So all of our guests, welcome. It is delightful to be hosting and moderating this program. We seem to be living in a day and age when there is not enough time in the day, right? There's so much, hold on a second. There we are. There's so much going on, and every day there's more to consume and understand and internalize. So we wanted to maybe take it slow when we're talking about art collecting, from analog to digital. By taking it slow, I mean, here's a wrapped up work of art, acquired in 2019 by a private Swiss collector. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it is. Collectors tend to be rather possessive, right? And they do it maybe for their own enjoyment. Some collectors, however, are happy to share their hobbies, their interests. And so we're very fortunate to have Sylvain Levy joining us today, because he is one of the collectors who likes to share his findings and his passion. So from private Swiss collection to now a virtual art village that Sylvain is going to discuss shortly. Art. But even before everything shut down, even before Art Basel 2020 was canceled, things have been moving from physical realm to digital. Maybe we can use Google Books project as a starting point. Maybe we should go further back in time, but there's an announcement floating around right now that Paris, even if you can't visit it, has a new perk. Louvre digitized their collection and we can visit it online. Similarly, Google Arts and Culture project is a way of bringing art to the masses through new technologies. One of the projects I want to highlight is Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. When I worked for them, this is the first time I learned about Google Arts Culture, but the only digitization that Lincoln Center has done of their art are photographs related to their own construction. They did not know how to, and apparently haven't figured out or decided against digitizing their actual artworks that have copyright within other entities and individuals. And then we have the explosion. We have the art market titans reacting to the digital realm. There's an article that was published this week about digital gold rush with Beeple's record-setting sale in March, with Sotheby's jumping on board, with Philips doing a sale. Things are accelerating, and NFTs are becoming a regular term for discussions around the dinner table. Similarly to Banksy doing a revolution with his works, now others are burning his prints to create NFTs. So the world is accelerating, and the auctions and the collecting frenzy are just one way of looking at the new frontier. What does it mean? Well, April 1st joke, MoMA buys a rainforest to offset their NFT collection. I don't think they've done that, but who knows? And not a joke, back in 2019, there was one of the first shows that I'm aware of where digital art, blockchain, and the CryptoPunks and other artists were displayed in a commercial art gallery. So finally, the news of the last 12 hours, there's a new NFT experience where you burn the old NFT. And here I thought NFTs were so new that you can't really do anything to them, to create a new work of art. So this is it a frenzy? Is it a trend? Museums are taking notice. Guggenheim Museum is looking for interns who can explain what this digital realm is all about. And just to put in perspective, SF MoMA has a work of art on display from 1950s. It's called Erasing de Kooning. It's a work of art by Rauschenberg, who was effectively burning the generation that came before him. So some things are new and some things are old, but what should we make of this new world? And Sylvain Levy, he's joining us. Thank you for joining us from Paris. Sylvain is a collector of contemporary Chinese art, and he has created a private collection that you're welcome to visit virtually. So Sylvain, can you tell us about your inspiration and how you choose pieces for the collection and what you expect the public to take away from this digital experience?
First, thank you very much, Irina, for inviting me. Can I add something on your presentation?
Absolutely.
I think that you missed something very important, is that since the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, we are experiencing a transformation of the human being. And we are speaking of technology, but what is important is to see that the human being is changing. And technology is just offering services to a new type of human being. And I think that if you don't bring at the core of all the discussion how people are changing and how they are becoming, I shall say that perhaps we discuss after, everyone here now have a digital twin who spends 6-7 hours in the digital world. And we have to address the emotions and desire of this digital twin. But perhaps it will be a part of the discussion. So coming back to a little bit to present ourselves, under my name is my name with Dominique, my wife. I will tell you a little bit how we went from analog to digital. in a few slides. First, can we move to the other one? With my wife, we've been collecting for 36 years. We've been collecting, it was the Leo Castelli model. There was no internet, there was no PDF. And when I wanted an image of a work, I had to wait for a slide for, it was not even a paper, it was in a diapositive. So it was, a very different way to connect to art at this moment. And it was really a slow art because you had to wait to receive the image before taking any decision. And you have this in our living room, a mixture of all our collection of design, of Chinese and design and contemporary furniture. Next slide. In 2005, we decided to do something different. After the beginning of the collection of the Chinese contemporary art, we decided to open the collection to the public. We decided to do that because we wanted to change the way we collect. And we thought that it was interesting also to share the experience of China with other people. And so we went into what I shall call the phygital space. At this moment, like for many collectors, being public is usually going through a space, a physical space. We decided that it was 2005, it was the beginning of YouTube. And so we decided to be on both, I should say, spaces, on the real one and on the digital one. Next one. This is, for instance, what I call the real one, or the physical one. We loan a lot of works to many institutions all over the year. And whatever enter into the collection is always available to be shown. And so we are acting like this. Also, we can have, like in the Museum of Tolerance in Moscow, we can have specific exhibition of the collection. So this is how we are physical. Next. And came the technology. And the technology came very, very quickly. Don't just for remember, 2007, it's the beginning of the smartphone. And just if I can show you something, this was the first iPad, 2010. And then 2010, we made an app on this iPad, on this new way of sharing images, 2010. So, and now more and more people are engaged with technology, and especially through electronic media. And as you can see, 3/4 of adults in the United States engage with arts now through electronic media. Next one. We decided also to be a nomadic collection. We were inspired by Marcel Duchamp, we were inspired by André Malraux. And so from the beginning, we wanted to be a nomadic collection. And we believe that the future will be, part of the future will be about portable and personal way to reach people, especially with VR. Next one. We had a lot of, we began to, I shall say, to surf on the digital wave since 2005. We've done a lot of things. As you can see at the left, we recreated the Grand Palais in 2009, recreated. And inside we put one of our biggest works. And with the stereoscopic glasses, it was like Avatar. You could see the works floating in the air. In 2012, we were the first one to have a museum on Second Life. And it was an incredible experience for us to be on Second Life. Next. Then in 2016, we went into VR museum. Why VR museum and why VR is a game changer? Because till this moment, you are looking at a screen of in a cinema, a screen of a computer, a screen of a portable, or you're looking at a screen. With VR, it's about immersion and interactivity. So, and you don't have any physical constraints. So you are adding, you are enhancing the experience in a way that never existed before. This is why I do believe that VR has a future. Next. This is our VR museum that we created to show our biggest work. This is an installation that we have, which is 40 meters high. This is a big Buddha sculpture that is 6 meters high. Okay, next. What is interesting here is that we made a special version for the children. It's a gamification version where they can take the works and throw them away. Next. Next. This is an example of the work that we have translated. Our new project now in VR is with the Museum of Pingshan. And this in this museum, next, it's possible for 3 persons to walk in a room all together and to visit a DSL experience. They see their avatar and they can walk together and experience and discuss and just visit the museum or part of our museum. Next. Next. This is our new project, the DSL Art Village project. Today, we are working on a project where within 5 or 6 months, we will be able to gather hundreds of persons to visit the reconstruction of an artist village of the 80s. We can visit together. We can go to the artist studio and meet the artist. We can have live performance. And we begin with the Chinese reconstruction of 1980s, but also we are adding to this project, for instance, the Grand Palais, where at the same time you will be able to visit a garden with great sculptures. And this is the future. Just to give you an idea, Facebook today, 20% of the people of Facebook are working on projects like that. So tomorrow, you will have your headset with your computer, and at a certain time, you would like to have a Zoom. You will put your headset and we'll be all together in the same room. Next. This is an example of another image of this art village. You can see there is a film, cinema, an outdoor cinema. And so we'll have a lot of lively performance always in this village. Next. What we have done also since 6 months, we went into video games. Why video games? Because we noticed when everybody went online with the COVID that it was not always a very satisfactory experience. And the people who master the screen, the best people are the people from the video games. And this community is a community of 1,500,000,000 people. And the turnover the revenue of the video game is bigger than the music and the cinema together. And so we want to try to enter into this new community with mixing games and art experiences. And so we have now 2 projects, one in China, which will be delivered within the next months, and one in Europe, which will be delivered in June. Next. So what are, I should say, our experience with art and law? So just I want to say something. I'm not an expert in law. The only thing that I had in law, I should say, I was a judge for 10 years in the commercial court in Paris. And especially I was in a special section in 2000 when it was the internet bubble. And so I had the experience a little bit of, I should say, law only in that field, but I'm not an art and law specialist. But we have to deal with a certain number of questions. And because of my background, I try to deal them with what I can do. Next. The most issues that we encounter is the issues of reproduction, representation, and adaptation in the way we use the artworks in our experiences. Next. What are my perception and what are my attitude today with this question of how do I manage the collection with the issues of I shall say, law? I'll be very, very direct with you. First, and especially now with the advancement of the technology at a speed that we never encountered before, the law lags behind technology. The other thing is that always the society is ahead of the law. Take Instagram, take whatever, always the society is in advance. And unfortunately, judges in general do not have sufficient training to understand new technologies. So it's very difficult, really, to have today a case linked with technology in a court. So for us, we have privileged the idea of fair use. It means that we try to take decisions where we think the artist is well defended, like our project also can happen. So we just try with our perception to fair use. Next. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sylvain. Before we turn the floor to an expert, to an art law and IP expert in the house, a few questions for you. So it's interesting that you're saying that judges are not trained to appreciate technology, because there's a very famous quote by a Supreme Court judge who said it's very dangerous of an undertaking for judges to be making decisions about art and aesthetics. But the fact that you are aware of the fact that you are taking art by creators and you are presenting it to additional sets of eyeballs, and the fact that you are mentioning fair use, we'll definitely try and unpack this. One of the questions that we discussed in preparation for this program was contracts. When you buy art, and you mentioned that before turning and focusing on Chinese contemporary art, you were collecting European art, 19th century art. Do you work directly with artists, or do you work through galleries, or do you work through auction houses? Can you tell us a couple of things about how you collect?
I should say we don't work with auction houses. We work mostly with artists and galleries. And to tell you the truth, and especially in China, at the moment where we made the collection, copyright was not an issue. And you know, and even in China, the idea of copy is different of the idea of copy in the West. The perception of the word copy is different. I think that today it could become an issue especially today with this kind of digital images that has been sold for a lot of amount of money. There is a real issue today on what you can do with the digital image. And you can have today questions or problems with an artist. But
Thank you very much.
once again, it's a question of fair use.
Thank you. So our second speaker today, Katharina Garbers-von Boehm, is a German lawyer and an expert on intellectual property. She has written as a student, as a scholar, on the transformation, not in the legal sense, but the movement from analog informational content to digital content. Some of Katharina's articles have been included in our handouts. And I would like to turn the floor to Katharina now to talk about collecting and copyright questions that have been raised so far.
Thank you very much, Irina. Thank you to you and to Louise and the Center for Art Law for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here. And thank you to Sylvain for this very, very interesting speech. I mean, it's very impressive how much you and your wife are first movers. That's absolutely great. Yes, as regards my practice, I actually started my career as an in-house lawyer in the film industry, but then worked for a major international law firm for more than 10 years, where I started off in a copyright team, and from there grew my very international art law practice. Meanwhile, I'm a partner here at Büsing, Müffelmann & Thaye, which is a German mid-sized firm with a strong international network, and our strong art law team advises collectors, private and public museums, galleries, a few artists with a very international top career in all various fields of law. Irina, now you can switch directly to yes, exactly, to this slide. Actually, when I prepared this slide yesterday, I felt a little bit like a dinosaur because it all started so early and it feels very, very far away. Digitizing art collections actually started to be a topic in the late 90s already, more for museums and public collections, because they felt that their mission to making art and culture available has somehow to be mirrored in the internet, on the internet. However, it took quite a while until the first collections went online. I looked it up today. Europeana, which is a major portal of German public museums, it only went online in 2008. But commercial picture agencies like, for example, Corbis, and which is now Getty Images, they already had a very well operating online licensing platform at that time, also offering reproductions from artworks. So from a legal perspective, at the time, we had to explain to museums how to clear rights. And at the time, there was still a very strong desire to also monopolize works in the public domain, which is much less the case today. It has actually, it's no longer fashionable to monopolize public domain works. Can you continue to the next slide, please? Oh, actually, no, let's stay there for a while. I'm sorry. Then in the early 2000s, but with a massive increase in the last, actually since COVID, buying physical artworks online became an issue. This has nothing to do, or not directly anything to do, with copyright. Also, copyright issues can occur there, but less. However, I wanted to mention this because buying art online was, for a very long time, not very attractive to collectors, it seemed, or only for very low value works. But this has changed very much since the last, since COVID especially. So catalyzed by COVID, this is a very fast development. So artists, of course, with the digital means started to be interested in these techniques and started to create works born digitally. For me, it feels like this had been since quite a long time, but the first AR and VR, or especially VR artworks on the market, on Art Basel, for example, it took until 2018 until this happened. Regarding the legal topics involved in that, well, on my desk, there were certain cases where artists and computer developers started to fight about who was the actual creator. Problems of crediting developers or specialists in VR techniques or like. Then another development obviously is artworks created by AI. We have seen artworks created by AI being sold by auction houses astonishingly well. From a copyright perspective, of course, this is a nightmare and nothing is clear at all. I will talk about this later. And then the hot topic of the moment, NFTs, as we've heard before. Yes, so with these 5 main developments since the late 90s, I felt like a dinosaur. So let's continue. From a copyright perspective, it all comes back to the same principle. If a collector acquires an artwork, he acquires the ownership of a physical object, but copyright remains with the artist. So for any use of the work that goes beyond exhibiting or making pictures for the private use of the collector, for example, to show it proudly on his mobile to other collectors, requires the consent of the artist in principle. We have heard that from Sylvain, what collectors want to do. Apart from that, it's reproduction, modification, making available on the internet. So all these things which collectors want to do with artworks apart from showing them physically are acts that are relevant from copyright perspective. So when digitizing physical or time-based media collections, compliance with the law means clearance of all rights relating to the content to be digitized. And it is important to know that there is no such thing as a good faith regarding rights clearance. So if someone tells you, well, yeah, you can use it, this doesn't mean that you can actually use it. You have to make sure that you ask the right person. A special challenge in this is that you have slightly different regimes in different countries. So the fair use, which you mentioned earlier, Sylvain, it is an American principle. There are no exhaustively listed exceptions or limits to copyright law, but there's a lot of case law, obviously. This is different in Europe. In Europe, as a principle, you have a enumeratively listed list of exceptions to copyright law. Yes, so if the collector or the museum did not ask the artist to grant certain rights when acquiring a work, such license will have to be asked for retroactively, which is a lot of work if many works by many artists are concerned, and especially in this example which you, Irina, mentioned earlier, of this photography collection, which then actually never made it online. Often the author is unknown. So in such case, it is literally impossible to digitize and make publicly available. Meanwhile, the legislation has sort of found a solution to that problem by creating special rules regarding so-called orphan works, so works the author of which cannot be found. However, yeah, it requires a lot of documentation in order to take advantage of such exception. And therefore, museums often refrain from plunging into digitization projects. Also, you have to know that reproduction photographs, which often exist and could be the basis for a digitization project, they might actually enjoy another layer of protection. So the photographer of such reproduction photographs might have to be asked as well. So before digitizing or making reproduction photos, which you then want to publish, it's always wise to make a proper contract with the photographer. So artworks can relate to other rights as well. For example, they can be trademark used in an artwork. Think of the Campbell soup, or personalities can be objects in such artworks, and in such case, the personality might have to be asked as well. So a lot of work to do. I think we are done with that slide. Why all of this? Well, you all know it. In case of copyright infringement, the infringer risks cease and desist proceedings, damages. This entails legal cost, and last but not least, there's always a reputational damage or risk, let's say, not necessarily damage. It depends. So to put it in a nutshell, it makes sense to ask for certain rights to be granted at the moment a work is acquired from a gallery or an artist, in order to avoid such retroactive right clearance. And this is not even difficult in most cases, as making available of a work or a collection is often, and Sylvain, I'm sure you can confirm this, a win-win situation for the artist and the collector, because of course it's also in the interest of the artist to get that sort of publicity. Irina, next slide, please. Yes, so I think we are running a bit late, so I'm trying to hurry up. This was the second point of digitization, buying online. Essentially, you have the same issues as offline: provenance, authenticity issues, title, and from a seller's perspective, the seller has to obey to all e-commerce rules, consumer protection, data protection, etc. So this is maybe also one of the reasons why this only took off so recently. Now we get back to copyright. When buying artworks created digitally, what is actually acquired? In the beginning of digitally created artworks, this was not so clear, because often, or maybe it's even like that still in some cases, you could say that a physical object was acquired. That is a physical installation, for example, with many screens, which consist, among other items, a data carrier containing a file. So all these screens and other devices would form part of the acquired artwork. Or it can be simply a data carrier and a file, now sometimes in addition to a token. We will get to that later. So essentially, this is the same like with a canvas. The collector, in the first place, only acquires a physical object or a file, and no rights apart from exhibiting it coming with it. However, a file or a data carrier is not very attractive to exhibit. So you would say that the reproduction right, which is the reproduction that is required to make the work visible, it comes with it tacitly implied, as otherwise the collector wouldn't be able to make any use of the work. But everything that goes beyond, it has to be agreed upon. So here a contract makes sense. Next slide, please. Yeah, very, very briefly, AI, I already said it in the introduction. I'm not so sure if artistically this, I mean, I'm not an art expert or art historian, but the concept of copyright law, it requires an author, and an author, it's a human person. There were discussions about animals. This monkey in the zoo, I think it was in Canada, which took a selfie, I think. So there was this question whether animals could be creators. There are no discussions whether a computer can be a creator in the sense of copyright law yet. So the criteria to find out whether a work created by AI would, according to the current traditional copyright concept, be, did someone, a person or a group of persons, like here, obvious, did they use this AI like a pencil, like a brush? This would be the criteria. But there is legislation around the corner and many things are unclear regarding AI. Of course, also the person investing into AI should have an incentive. Rights, intellectual property rights are always an incentive to create something or to invest into something. But yeah, so far, no legislation yet. You just have the normal copyright legislation, also applicable for software. And therefore, many open questions. So now the new thing. Irina, should we have a look at the video first?
I'm a member of a group of tech and art enthusiasts. Standing next to me right now is a 2006 Banksy piece entitled Morons that is certified authentic by Banksy's Pest Control. Right now, we are currently minting it with our partner Superfarm, an NFT platform for trading and minting NFTs. Tomorrow, the NFT will be sold on OpenSea. More information can be found on our Twitter, Burnt Banksy. Right now, I'm gonna burn this Banksy. And the reason behind this is for the NFT, if we were to have the NFT and the physical piece, the value would be primarily in the physical piece. By removing the physical piece from existence and only having the NFT, we can ensure that the NFT, due to the smart contract ability of the blockchain, will ensure that no one can alter the piece and it is the true piece that exists in the world. By doing this, the value of the physical piece will then be moved onto the NFT, being the only way you can have this piece anymore.
Okay, I think we can, then what will happen in that video is that this Banksy will burn. It will totally burn. It takes 5 minutes for it to burn. And I wanted to show you this video because it shows, well, it is a good and a bad example of NFTs. It is a bad example because this Banksy was originally not created digitally. And it has to be destroyed in order to give that NFT the value that they pretend it should have. And at the same time, it's a good example for all the copyright issues that might be involved, because also with NFTs. You can never be sure if a work is authentic, as we don't know if Banksy was involved in this, and this NFT might be a blunt copyright infringement of the original work. So yeah, I think I can suppose that everyone knows basically what an NFT is.
Katharina, we have just a few minutes left, so maybe we can skip NFT discussions and do a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing regarding copyright law and NFTs, because what I found out is that depending on the platform, the collector actually, or the buyer of an NFT, he can get some rights with the purchase of this work other than in the analog world, because some of the platforms, they actually permit commercial use of such NFT up to a certain amount. I gave this example of Crypto Kitten. So yeah, but I don't want to keep you from asking questions. And I thank you very much for your attention, everyone, for this small tour d'horizon.
Thank you so much. So you have raised excellent questions about when should negotiations between collectors of art, whether it's born analog or whether it's born digital, take place, and who can begin this conversation. So Sylvain, do you mind, if it's okay to share, you've last year, you've bought works that were only digital or only three-dimensional or physical?
Both.
All right, so you collect now both files and physical pieces.
You know, we've been collecting files for more than 25 years. We collected Bill Viola 25 years ago.
There is, of course, a question of, since the world is changing and the experiences are changing, whether online display is similar to in-person display. And what I was wondering, when Louvre announced that they digitized 500,000 or almost 500,000 objects, did they only digitize works that are out of copyright? But the question to both of our speakers, is the law not catching up fast enough, or are we living in a new world where certain practices are becoming more anticipated, expected, vis-a-vis experiences that art can provide?
Can I take you an example? I think which is something that I've experienced and that I'm sure that you have experienced. For a long time, it was impossible to take photos in a museum. But now the museum, they put Instagrammable works. And all the artists in the world, they dream to have their works on TikTok or on Instagram. So this is how the society has moved. Then after you have the law, who can protect the artist if he considers that it's not fair. But also the artist cannot go against the changement of the society. So once again, it's always the same thing. You have to be in a certain way. I use the term fair. It means that what you do with the work has to be relevant for you and for the artist. But you cannot, I tell you, I don't know many collectors or any collector, when he buys a works, that he goes and he said, okay, I will buy it if I have the copyright. I've never done something like this. You know, you go, you look at the work, you like it, and you buy it and you pay for that. And then after, if you want to show it in museum, you show it into museums, and you don't ask the artist if he wants or he doesn't want the work to be shown in the museum. So I think that there is the law and we have to abide with the law, but also we have to know that in practically, things are a little bit different.
Katharina, what's your take on this?
I can confirm this shift. I said it in my introduction. When I started to deal with this topic, museums wanted to monopolize works that were out of copyright by, for example, forbidding to take pictures. This has totally changed now, and there is a certain change of culture. However, we must not forget that the artist has to eat. And copyright is also a way of participating of major commercial success of a work. And it should be at the discretion of the artist to decide which uses he wants and which uses he doesn't want. Of course, the internet is very tempting also for artists. I mean, they get inspired on the internet, and everything is kind of changing in that regard, because also the artists, they take digitally what other artists have done. So this also brings up a lot of questions, and copyright is a growing issue due to the fact that everything is everywhere in the internet. But I think it would be the wrong next step to simply abolish copyright, because there has to be some solution for it. I mean, we have seen it with the music industry, and now there's iTunes and everyone, or other streaming services, and everyone pays for their music. So there will have to be something for artworks as well that still allows artists to and also their heirs to generate some remuneration from the exploitation of a work.
This is a very...
Katharina, may I tell you my feeling? For an artist to eat is not to sell the copyright, but to sell the artwork.
True.
And if you need to go with a lawyer to buy an artwork, I don't know many people who will buy an artwork. That's my first reaction. My second reaction is that there are other ways to make artists have a portion of the price, is the resale price, which is existing and which I think is a very good thing. And perhaps with the non-fungible token, and if in a contract of a non-fungible token, it is said that 20% of the value should go back to the artist whenever it's resale, I think it could be something interesting. But I think it's things are as a collector, if I see an artwork and the artist tell me, bring your lawyer, I'll bring my lawyer to buy the artwork. I say, there are many other artworks, and I will not, get in trouble for that.
The artist will not do that. It's rather the task of, I have seen, I think it's also different of culture between Europe and the States. In the States, actually, it's very normal to buy artworks with a contract, and there are copyright clauses in such contracts, and such more elaborated contracts of purchase. They are also coming now in Europe, and it is very normal now for the collector to reserve the right to show the work online on his website, for example, or put it on Instagram or so. And there's never a problem with such clause, because, as we said, it's also in the interest of the artist. So yeah, why not get compliant once you have the chance? We don't know what.
Let me interject. So it's almost 1 o'clock. We are prepared to go over, as we've discussed, maybe for 15 or so minutes. Our guests are welcome to stay, and if you can't stay for the entire conversation, we are sending and sharing with you the slides and the handouts that are outstanding. There's a lot of wonderful reading material included in the handout, so please take a look. This is a really wonderful conversation, because we're looking at the two sides of the spectrum, and theoretically, when that happens, they meet these two ends. They ultimately end meeting. If we talk about perhaps about a smart contract, or mandatory license. It means that the user, the collector, can digitize and display, but then there has to be automatically payment made to the artist, similar to the music industry, for example. Also, I would like to remind our listeners that Sylvain is based in France, so he just mentioned resale royalty as a way of thanking the artist long term. In the United States, there's no resale royalty scheme, so that is not available or has not been available historically to the artist creating in the United States. And similarly, the fair use conversation, it's very complicated because we see cases being decided both in favor of fair use and transformative usage and against fair use. So the copyright, at least from our perspective as US trade attorneys, it does not automatically means if it's infringed, the artist gets to win in court. The artist has to bring action. And if the artist feels that a collector is using her work in a meaningful way, theoretically, that is not necessarily a trigger of the copyright law to come to force. But again, having a contract that spells out the potential uses could help some collectors avoid problems down the line. So what about this mandatory license, Katharina? What do you think? Do you think it's a
In what context do you want to be able to acquire a mandatory license, or do you want to oblige someone to give a mandatory license? I haven't understood that.
Give a mandatory, so artists at least have the appropriation artists have been saying they don't ask for permission because they think a permission may not be granted by the original creator to transform their works. So if you ask and the permission is denied, then subsequent use of that copyright protected information becomes more egregious. But in the music industry, if somebody wants to take another composer's content and make a cover, for example, record another version of a song by Beyonce, this was just explained to me again by entertainment attorney, they can do that. They just have to pay a license.
Oh, this is what you mean by mandatory license.
Right.
Okay.
A mechanical license.
I think this is not very much, it's not really comparable. In the appropriation case, it is either fair use or it's not. And regarding music, it's clear that it's a reproduction. So it's a different approach, because the appropriation, it has its own meaning.
And what about moving content from creating a virtual room, right? VR experience, is it not then potentially fair because it's transformative and it creates an experience that's curated, right?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends on the legal regime, but it also depends on the use. And I think generally speaking, you can say if this use in the VR room, it's a mere decoration, it might be difficult. It is a reproduction. But if there is something, it has a meaning that goes beyond mere reproduction, then this could be fair use.
Right. Do we have any questions from the audience? What I would like to propose, I'd like to open and invite Louise to make a couple of comments about NFTs. She's our in-house expert on NFTs and royalties, if that's okay.
I think in-house expert is a very big word, but thank you. I do agree that NFTs have a lot of potentialities. They're opening up a lot of possibilities for automated resale royalties, but I've also been researching that topic extensively, and what I found is that there's a lot of platforms out there. There are a ton of different offers. Sometimes the platforms allows artists to choose the level of royalty. It could be anywhere between 0% to 100%. But there's still like acceptable practices, and artists saying to others like, don't put it above 10% because nobody's going to want to be involved in a contract like that where 10% will go back to the artist. And then also on the other end of the spectrum, if and when there is a potential, level of royalty that can be chosen through those platforms, they might not be transferable between platforms. As in, if somebody creates an artwork, creates an NFT, sells it, let's say on Foundation, and then later somebody purchases it, sells it again on a different platform, such as, I don't know, Rarible, then the resale royalty automated will not work. So it does have its limits. I think they're not all created equal, but I do believe it's a beginning of an alternative, at least to the US system. But then comparing it to the European system, where you already have that mandatory resale royalty for works of the visual arts, then what do NFTs actually bring to artists? I guess is exposure, the ability to work without having a gallery, to create to create an audience and to do the marketing and things like that. I hope that also helps and brings to the conversation.
Thank you. Sylvain, I have a question for you. Once you decide that a work of art is no longer within the mission or within the view of your collection, as it's a private collection, what do you do in the deaccessioning scheme? Do you go back to the artist or the gallery? Do you remove the work from the digital collection? How do you proceed with deaccessioning?
Most of the case, we go back to the galleries. And if the galleries do not accept, we make private sales. We don't put on auction. And if we feel that it can disrupt the market of the artist, we keep the work. And naturally, if we decide, and if the work is no more in the collection, we take it out from our digital museums, whatever. This is how we proceed.
Have you spent much or any time in the these virtual rooms that the fairs created very quickly in the course of the pandemic year? And what is your have you learned any of the new tricks, or have you seen them incorporating your work in these experiences that galleries have been creating?
Once again, we've been trying to I shall say, to surf on the digital wave now for 15 years. And what we have learned, but it's our personal experience, is that you don't replicate the offline online. Online is a totally different experience. And if you just replicate, you cannot have any type of emotion or any type of reaction of the person. This is why I was telling you, I think that we are entering into a very new world, where people are different. When the artwork has become content, when the public has become consumer, where the museums will have to go into the digital distribution if they want to survive. We have entered into a new world where we don't really have any type of guiding lines in the art world at this moment. But what is sure for me is that tomorrow will be very different in the way artists, I shall say, express themselves, materially speaking, creatively speaking, even how the business will be done, how the museums will evolve, how the collectors will evolve. I think we have entered into a new terra incognita, what was called in the Middle Age.
Thank you. Any more questions from our audience? I think I agree with Sylvain that every day brings a new explosion of content and terminology. And similarly to maybe someone's feeling that when street art became mainstream and when Banksy became mainstream, with NFTs, I think they are now mainstream. So the question is...
I'm not sure, Irina. If I can contradict you, I'm not sure.
Sure. Have you acquired any NFTs, or is that not something that appeals to you yet?
I'm in a kind of wait and see position. I'm very open to digital, any type of digital adventure or experience. But let us try to look at what's happening today. NFT for me is a financial tool more than an digital art. Today art has become something very difficult to define. Art is part of the luxury industry, of the financial industry, of the leisure industry, and of culture, and also art and culture. For me, NFT at this moment, when you look at the profile of the people, it's people who have decided to speculate, using digital art as a way to speculate. And they speculate in two ways. On the artist become a kind of future, and on the money becoming a kind of future. So we don't, but in the other hand, what is good with this NFT, it gave, I shall say, light or exposure to a certain number of artists working with digital tools. And fortunately, it's no more the usual suspects that today are, I shall say, on the stage. And today, if we can give the chance to a new generation of artists to create with the tools of our time, I think NFT would have been very useful. But NFT as it is today, I'm in a kind of wait and see position in terms of putting NFT in the collection.
Katharina?
The question is also how sustainable can this be without the galleries? These smart contracts, they are bilateral. There are only two parties to such business so far. So the galleries so far, they don't have, there is no means to include them into the platform so far. We will see how all of this will develop, but yeah, this building up a career, building up a market, which usually galleries do, yeah, it is, I think, a valuable contribution.
When Google Books project was announced back almost 20 years ago, one of my internal fears was, well, once the books are digitized, the physical object is not going to be really that desirable, because if the access is easier through the digital means, why hold on to this kind of heavy weight? And collecting NFTs seems to be a very easy thing to collect. They don't take any room. You don't have to pay storage. You don't have to pay transportation costs. Any comments on that aspect of art collecting?
It's a very, art is a journey. Collecting is a journey. It's not about amassing artworks. It's the way you decide to make your life. And it can make an ordinary person have an extraordinary life. Perhaps it's an old-fashioned way to look at a collection. But if you look at the collection only through the eyes of artworks, I think that you are very, very quickly disappointed or frustrated. And so what you're telling, I don't feel, because there is no, we cannot compare what is not comparable. I think this is two types of experiences. I think that the VR is a very useful experience. We are having a lot of great feedbacks from the children, from the old people who are trying the headset, and tomorrow they will be able to go to Shanghai, New York, and Paris, and there will be escape. It's about escapism. And so give a chance to this kind of experience. But you will never say that this experience will replace the other one.
Katharina, do you think law is we will see explosion of new regulations to catch up with the digital art practices?
Well, copyright is constantly transforming since a long time, and it will keep on doing so. And in addition, there will be regulation coming up regarding the whole money laundering part of the blockchain and of Bitcoins and Ethereum and so forth. So that will be, that's what's going to happen.
Thank you. Yes?
I do agree.
Well, I would like to thank both of you, Sylvain, Katharina. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I'm very, very grateful to you for being generous and telling us about the work that you do and your passions. We are sending you guys a survey. We're sending you suggested readings on the subject. You also have links to enjoy and articles to internalize if you wish before tomorrow, before the next news cycle hits or wave. We have 2 wonderful programs scheduled for the second half of April. Hope to see many of you there. And it's been very, very educational and eye-opening. So thank you so much and see you all soon.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Merci, Katharina. Merci, Irina.
Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day and happy evening back in Europe. See you soon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Tschüss.